Wasatyahala ikata Hrafnar. With you all health, I am Hrafnar, or Raven, whichever you prefer. And today, I'm going to talk about patriotism to the Canadian or United States government. In the next episode, I might talk about racism, although these kind of overlap. In case you haven't heard, they recently found 215 murdered Native American children on the grounds of a Canadian residential school. Residential schools are schools that have been used since over a century ago by the colonists. I know you want to call them the United States government and the Canadian government. I know you want to, but too bad. To kill the Indian, but save the man. I don't need to explain anymore. Not about that. You get the point. It's racist. And Native American people have been trying to tell the rest of the world for quite some time now of the abuses that they suffer in those schools. And by the way, they're forced. They've been forced. The Native American children get taken away from their families forcibly, and the parents get threatened with being imprisoned or incarcerated if they don't surrender their children to these disgusting piece of shit schools. The children are taken away from their families and taken away from their cultures, and they're being forced to take white names instead of their traditional ones. They're being forced to speak English in place of their native languages, and they're being forced to leave behind their traditional spirituality. It's been going on for a long time. And on top of this, they are sexually abused and physically abused and murdered. This instance of 250 Native American children having been found in a Canadian one is not an isolated event. It has happened throughout Canada and the United States, and it continues to happen. And these residential schools are part of your little governments. They are instituted by the governments. They are enforced by the governments. So if you are patriotic towards your United States government or your Canadian government, you're patriotic towards murderers and despicable pieces of shit. The more we learn about the evils of these governments, the more and more it becomes increasingly hard to find patriotism understandable. And do not try to say that you can be forgiven for it because you didn't know. Because you are responsible for knowing about the people and these systems and the organizations you choose to be loyal to. You are responsible for your blind loyalty. You. No one else is responsible for your ignorance. Especially when it's been going on for over a century. I mean, you've had time to not be ignorant about it anymore. Everyone has. You've all had time. You can't use "I didn't know" as an excuse. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. You'd rather blindly support a murderous organization. Patriotism to the United States government or the Canadian government is equivalent to murder as far as I see it. If you support murderers, you're a murderer. And you can't, as I said, use ignorance as an excuse because you could have and should have known better. Grow strong and think deep.